vaccinated, I don't think we need to worry about it.
Okay. So the statement that is it going to lead on to the so-called fourth wave of the pandemic has been answered very well. But we keep seeing a lot of things. The Omicron, we had the Beta, the Alpha, the Gamma, the Delta, and all that. And then we had the Omicron, which we thought was a blessing in disguise. And now they are saying it's an Omicron XE, XD, and we are getting all sorts of combinations. What is this XE recombinant variation?
See, this COVID Omicron, all this, whatever you had mentioned, is BA.1, BA.2, and .2 and sub-variant. And now you have this.
I just like to interrupt for a minute. There was some problem with the streaming. So the streaming link has been changed and it has been updated on Facebook webpage. So kindly log into the new streaming link. If there are 6 people watching, so I just wanted to 6 people waiting who are not able to watch along with the other people. So I will change the streaming link and it has been posted on the new webpage. Thank you. The new link has been posted. Yeah, please, sir, you can go ahead.
So all these are Omicron subvariants. Whatever you had mentioned is BA.1 and .2 and .1.2 and Omicron XE variant, XD has come, XF has come. All these are come. So all these variants are just Omicron subvariants, but I think they are more of academic importance. If you look at it from the patient's angle, the symptoms are more or less the same, that no difference at all. As I had mentioned, the same symptoms like the scratchy throat and the cough, cold, and sneezing occur without affecting the lung parenchyma. But the only difference between this XC variant and the other Omicron variants is that it is more infectious. More infections means more cases you will pick up, and more tests, if you do more cases, you will pick up. So apart from that, it does not mean anything. It's only more infectious. And it's not, though we keep telling it is infectious, this XC variant was picked up in UK somewhere in January, if I'm right. And from January on, if you take, it's more than January, February, March, and April, back end of April now. And it does not cause any devastating effect anywhere across the world by increasing the number of mortalities. No doubt the number of cases are increasing, but the mortalities have not increased. The hospitalizations have not increased. They were picked up. So I think it is too early to say whether this XC variant is going to cause a very big problem at all. I like to add a word here about the genome sequencing. Genome sequencing only tells us what variant is prevalent now. From the patient,
so is this genome sequencing very important, and should it be carried out for all those who are undergoing COVID tests?
Yeah, definitely. When you have to look at the epidemiological standpoint, what people need to look at the genomic sequence, we need to know which is variant, which is present, which variant is going on. This is very, because a lot of variants are, I think so far we have got about 30 variants of Omicron, they say 600 subvariants have come. But we don't know whether they are going to cause any serious problems at all. It is always better to keep looking at the genome sequencing from the academic standpoint to formulate strategies and so on.
But for the patient and for the general public, is it really important? No.
It is not all that important for the people to know which variant they are suffering from. I don't know. What they should look at is at their symptoms, whether they are having excessive symptoms or more lung-related symptoms and so on is what they must worry about. And as long as that does not occur, I don't think we should worry about.
So then the thing about the, we are seeing a lot about the R value and all that in the media. I think that and all we should be downplayed a bit rather than giving too much.
For a person who is interested in knowing what's going on, it is always good.
That does not occur.
R value means, what it means is the capability of an individual to infect, if what, so from an academic, from the epidemiological standpoint, if the R value comes below 1, we say the pandemic has passed. The pandemic has completely passed if the R value is below 6. In some places, it's 2. So that means in clusters, in small clusters, the numbers might go up. but it does not merit that the pandemic is back again, because we have had our vaccinations, and we had an excellent vaccination program for COVID vaccination. A lot of people have been vaccinated with COVID vaccines. On the immunity level, the natural infection, the vaccine related infection, everything immunity has all gone up quite significantly. And I don't think there is any cause for any worry.
So these recombinants, I think we should, I mean, you don't need to worry like we did for the Delta and the other waves. So that's
I
what,
always used to tell, I think this is to be worried only by the doctors,
not by
not to be
the,
worried by the patients.
okay. So I think there's too much of information floating around, if that's what you would like to make an emphasis on that. And so I would like to see in your practice, are you starting to see cases in our part of the country, in South India and places? And
In
if
Tamil
so,
Nadu,
how is the severity and the oxygen requirement in these cases? Or are we doing the genome sequencing? So there are again the whole lot of questions, but with pertaining to our region.
the genome sequencing is going on quite a bit in our country. I think we have improved our, compared to what we were in 2019, our capability to do the genome sequencing has gone up quite significantly. There is no doubt about it. But in Tamil Nadu, if you look in Tamil Nadu, we have not had any sudden big rise in COVID infections needing hospitalization. Only recently we have seen papers that in IIT Chennai there have been some cluster of infection positive people. But that's quite natural, because IIT Chennai is a place where a lot of people come from across the country to join there. Definitely you will have some, if you check, and if you have a symptomatic, if you check the testing, you would always have some positive. In my opinion, I think the numbers that are being mentioned, this Omicron, is a gross underestimation only, because we have stopped kind of testing, and people are also not greatly worried about this cough and cold now, because as I said, people who are vaccinated have kind of stopped using masks itself, though it's a bit of a overconfidence. When they are in crowded places, they are removing the mask. It's a bit of a overconfidence. But if you do a point prevalence at a particular point of time, definitely you are going to have more and more Omicron cases, which means there are more Omicron cases even now. If you take the present,
Are we right in saying more and more Omicron cases, or are we just right in saying more and more COVID cases? Because we do genome sequencing for like every patient who undergoes testing, or is it only
in samples we keep doing that. We don't do it. It's a costly exercise. We don't do it for all the people actually.
Okay.
Now the COVID and Omicron are kind of synonymous. That's what I would say. Most of the COVID infection
There's no Omicron.
Omicron infection.
We don't get Delta anymore.
Yeah, we don't find Delta. I think Delta is still around, but it is very much less. Only about 2% of the present thing is a Delta across the world. So we don't have much of the Delta. It is more of a Omicron variant that is doing the rounds now. And if I say it is a gross underestimate of the infection that we are projecting, it also means we are not having any hospital. The corollary of that is there are no great hospitalizations in COVID. Recently, we saw in Chennai, the Hindu, the wards, COVID wards were empty in Tamil Nadu, which means the number of cases may be more if my statement is true, that there's a gross underestimate of the Omicron, that in statistics, and at the same time, there are no admissions also to the hospital in ICC or deaths because of the COVID, which means COVID Omicron has given quite a lot of natural immunity to the people. One of the reasons why we are not seeing the hospitalizations and the admissions and the deaths and other problems that we have seen in the first and the second waves.
Okay. I think that was a very clear explanation and would have solved a lot of questions. And we are getting to see a lot of questions in our portal also. So should we start, some of them have asked, should we start testing strategy like what we were doing in the first and second waves, like test, track and isolate, like they were saying you have to increase the number of testing, only then you'll find the more number of patients and reduce the transmission. Should we really start that? Because as you said, the fear for the virus has actually come down. Even in the cinema theaters when I had gone recently, there were nobody who was wearing masks actually. We looked like odd people out, and so that actually led to me questioning my own thing, whether should I continue wearing a mask or not. So what do you think the strategy should be? Should we keep doing increasing number of tests, or should we continue as it is like this and do testing only as and when it is required? What should our strategy be?
In my personal opinion, I think testing, tracking, and isolation, and treating and preventing, like putting on a mask and going for the vaccine, are two different things. Mask and the vaccination are very, very essential and mandatory. They must be insisted upon. Masks should be there when you are going to a crowded place.
Masks there are a lot of questions about masks itself, so we'll deal with it in
No,
the
I'll come
next
to that.
section.
Yeah. So
Yeah, then
mask and that is one aspect. That is a mandatory thing. Test, track, and isolation was a very good strategy when we did not know anything about COVID. That's a very good strategy when we did not know anything about it. When we know about it, when you know what's COVID, when we know the drugs available for COVID, when you know that this Omicron variant, which is doing the rounds, all the subvariants which I mentioned are all, as I keep telling, in many meetings, this XC variant, which is being touted as one of the highly infectious virus, was detected in January, I think somewhere around 17, 18, no, I think the birth date is being mentioned, 19, if I'm right, yeah, in UK. And it is more than 3 or 4 months now, we have not had any great devastating effects of that virus vaccine. So which means that testing for all cases as a routine, I don't think it is a good exercise. So in a country where the finance is one of the big issues, and it is not going to be of any great use also for it. Only symptomatic testing is very, very important. And if there is a cluster, yes, maybe you can find if there are any cases in that with new symptoms or something, yes, there is a, but test, track, and isolation is not a good policy. It's usually the policy of people who think of this zero COVID strategy. So we have a lot of experts, health experts, said across the country, across the world, globally, we have all mentioned that this zero COVID strategy is not going to work at all. Zero COVID strategy is a draconian way of isolating people, tracking all the people, tracking all the flat inmates, doing all those things. But it doesn't work out that way, because if you keep doing that, you can see the first wave, the Korea and the Australia, the Wuhan, which had the draconian law, strict COVID policy, did not have it. But the subsequent wave, Omicron, they had quite a number. I think it has come back with the way it doesn't trying to put, even now China is following the policy of strict test track
isolation. I think the whole city of Shanghai is in lockdown. That's what
I don't think it is a good policy to do the test track, but the symptomatics have to be tested, and you need to look for symptoms more than going for the testing. What's most important? The moment you have a cough and cold, just observe yourself about the any suspicious symptoms like sputum, breathlessness, and increasing oxygen needs, and so on. Then that's the time when you must go for it. I don't think, in my opinion, that you must go for this test track isolation in a very big way, like we did in the 2019, because that time we didn't know anything about COVID. Now we have all the data, all the information with us. People know, you can ask even a man on the street what's good for a COVID, to be able to tell you. So at this stage, if you do that, there may not be a very good cooperation from the public also.
So I think that will answer our next question from one of the participants. Should we bring back restrictions? I think you have answered most of the things in this, but I don't know if he is meaning by restrictions, it's like a specific time. You open the restaurants at 50% capacity, you open the flights at 1/3 capacity, and you leave the middle seat free, and all those kind of specific restrictions. Should we bring back those restrictions, or should we just continue life as it goes about it?
No, this is a question, I think, which we have to wait and see. Because the mandatory thing is, when you mask yourself, there are two things. One is masking, two is social distancing, and three is avoid the overcrowding pressure. These things will come into picture only when serious problems start occurring. It is more than 3 months now since these new variants have come to the market. We have not seen any serious problems. Even in countries like US and UK, where there is a surge, the serious COVID deaths have not occurred. In India, we are not seen at all. We have done a very good job with regard to this thing COVID. I can say that. So we have not had, when we have not had that kind of a thing, to think of restrictions now is a bit premature. But we can be a bit careful. Masking, one can be masked when he goes to a place where there's going to be a crowd, like you said, in a theater and anything. But bringing down the numbers, cutting down, I don't think it is essential at all, provided people take care of themselves. The personal protection, which is important for COVID, I would say not only for COVID, even for other diseases also, is extremely very important, like the hand sanitation and your masking. If you can take care of that, I don't think we need to go for any restrictions which are there
Aggressive
before.
restricting
Yeah,
methods.
yes, yes. Even the travel restrictions, other things may not come through. Even nobody is thinking of those things at all in our medicine.
That brings us to our next question. Actually, the mask mandate. Just 2 weeks back, we saw a lot of states raising the restrictions, and masks are not mandatory and all that stuff. And but still, people continue to wear masks, and it was at their own discretion. So now, again, 2 days back, we are seeing the mask mandate being reimposed in a lot of places. So, were we premature in lifting those restrictions, and are we premature now in getting those restrictions, or these are restrictions which has to go on forever, or maybe for another long period of time? What do you think?
Mask should be there, my opinion. Mask is one of the best way of preventing oneself from infections. Not only COVID, even other infections one can prevent. I'm very sure with the way our people are wearing masks now, the incidence of tuberculosis after about 5-10 years definitely dropped. Our zero TB strategy might see some success after some time, because masks are so good in preventing bacterial and virus entry. And if you can use the N95 mask, they are definitely good. I wouldn't say it is too good, because putting on a mask and going around gives the feeling that we are in a imminent fear of getting some disease. I think that thought process should go out among the people. We are wearing a mask to prevent ourselves from any disease, not only for the COVID. That thought has to come into the minds of the people. If that thought comes into the people, the mask compliance will be very good. People were just waiting to get out of the mask because they thought someone is going to say that COVID is gone, we can remove the mask. Right? If
Correct.
COVID is gone, some other disease can come. One can get measles, one coughs, one can get chicken pox and coughing, one can get TB and coughing, pneumonia and coughing. So mask is something to prevent yourself from disease, not to prevent yourself from COVID. So one should remember that it is a preventer for a disease, a droplet-borne or a cough-borne disease. So if that thought process comes, mask will never, nobody said remove them, you can throw away the mask. They said there is no need for a mask. It does not mean it is, you can throw away the mask and go around like that. Prevention is always better. So that is why once they found some case increase in numbers, they have mentioned that you can wear the mask. And I would, in my opinion, I would say the masks are extremely important for old people, vulnerable people, and people with comorbidities. They must wear a mask whenever they come out, even with or no COVID, with COVID or no COVID, they must have the mask at all. There's no premature decision or something. They should have that personal protective things like the hand sanitation and the mask should be there.
Right. Your take on masks seems to be a bit more aggressive than the other restrictions. So, but I don't know how much the public is going to take care of themselves like that. But as you say, masks will definitely be useful. Has my video stopped or something?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll take this question and then we'll think. But you can hear me, right? My video will be back in a minute. Yeah. So we have some questions regarding the travel. Just when we thought it was over and a lot of travel restrictions were lifted, and again international travel was also starting to see the light of the day. Again, are we back to square one? Because a lot of countries are still enforcing the regulations and restrictions, and we need to have a quarantine and all those things. Are we back to square one? And we have some questions here Is it safe to undertake domestic travel or wait till things settle down? I don't know how much more we have to wait till it settles down. So, what is your take on that regarding
I don't
flight
think as
travel?
a quarantine is one of the means of preventing the person from infecting others. I think some of the countries are being slightly more careful. That's why they are not preventing people entering there, but they are only asking them to get quarantined at home, not like before go to a place where you have to stay in a hotel or something like that. It's not like that. Quarantine is to prevent the guys. So even if you are tested negative, some countries say you must go and quarantine yourself. I don't think it will be a very big thing. Another 3 or 4 because people are expecting the numbers to go up a bit. And if the numbers go up and no serious problems occur, there would not be any restrictions at all in travel. With regards to domestic travel, I don't think there are going to be any restrictions. If you can mask yourself up and go around wherever you go and inside the confined spaces, if you wear the mask and stay, the chances of spread also becomes very less.
Less.
The only thing is the airlines might insist on wearing the mask for some more time to come. And that's one way of preventing the vaccine. But I don't think the travel restrictions anybody is thinking about at all, because just now the economy is recovering from
Recovering. Correct.
gamble, and I don't think it's going to happen. And no country or no international organization is thinking of putting a ban on this. And as I said, the same thing applies, because most when they contact the health expert, they say we have gained quite an amount of knowledge with regards to the COVID in the last 2 years, and there's no point in going back to the same lockdown restrictions and travel restrictions and international travel restrictions.
Okay. So when you go to these countries outside India, they ask for our vaccination certificate. So, and what do you think has been the role of vaccination in handling COVID so far from 2019, 20, 21, and now we are in 22? What has been the role of vaccination? Because we have all taken 2 doses and we were very happy. Now people are being asked to take boosters. Where do we stand on these vaccination strategies?
See, vaccination is one of the best method of preventing oneself from COVID. And this COVID, the present COVID vaccines that are available are all based on the Wuhan virus vaccine that was available. They were prepared on a dead virus platform and connected to an adjuvant, so that the dead virus gives a lot of protection and the adjuvant will multiply it. That's the basis of our co-vaccine. So co-vaccine I would consider as one of the best vaccines, because it's the whole virus vaccine platform with an adjuvant which can give immunity not only to the COVID virus but also to the some of the subvariants also, and also multiply the vaccine. But the other component viruses were giving only component, but they were also good only. But the one that came, Omicron, that escaped this vaccine immunity. But it's a smart virus. It went around infecting everybody, but at the same time, it also improved the immunity, did not cause much of a disease. It didn't cause much of a lung problem, which means Omicron itself was a booster for us. So Omicron caused a good booster effect for us, for most of the individuals. And as I said, if this is an underestimate, by now, more than 85-90% of the people in our country should have been infected with Omicron. They must be having antibodies quite significant effect. One blessing in guys with Omicron is that Omicron, though it escaped the immunity of the vaccine, it caused a lot of boosters, and these boosters prevented not only the Omicron, to some extent they also prevented the Alpha and Delta. That's what we saw. So when Delta was doing its roost in our country, sometime May, June, it was causing such a severe problem. When Omicron surfaced, it totally wiped out the Delta, which means it produced antibody to such levels that even the Delta got subdued and only the Omicron remained, or the Omicron antibodies were there. So which means the virus vaccines, the one that is prepared as the co-vaccine, And one, they like the Covishields, the mRNAs, other adeno, all these viral component vaccines. Compared to them, Covaxin is slightly better. And other vaccines can cause some side effects. But what will happen when the virus is wild and we don't have much vaccine, we had no other option but to take even the component vaccine. That is why Covishields were produced in large numbers. Covaxin could not be produced in such large numbers. So the data was not available to that extent. So WHO said, we just wait, there's not much data. There is a delayed entry of Covaxin to the market. So in my opinion, after about 2 or 3 years, COVID, I think, is going to be endemic. It is, I don't think it is going to disappear. Like we are taking vaccines for swine flu vaccines, we may have to take vaccines for COVID as well. But for COVID, you may have the dead virus vaccines and the vaccines prepared on the inactivated virus platforms. And you also may have some of these RNA components might have. Time will tell which will be we need to have some data on these vaccines, both Covaxin and all the. But now we were in a hurry. We prepared the vaccine, we gave the vaccine. We did not have much of the side. If you take the data on Covaxin in our country, we did not have much of side effects in Covaxin. So they have done very well. And same is the case with Covishield. Our country had only Covaxin and Covishield, and some vaccines were available. Some Russian vaccines came, and some other vaccines came. But majority were Covaxin and Covishield
Covishield.
vaccines. So we have done very well, and the certificates are valid across the country. It only gives us some sense of immunity and some sense of confidence also. And above all, I say the Omicron wave that went through our country, went through the universe, gave a fairly good amount of resistance, immunity to the people, so that they are not developing the kind of disease which they saw in the alpha and the the delta waves.
Okay. So actually, one of our viewers have asked, there are so many different types of vaccines, which is the best and what you recommend? I think you have answered that question. But as a personal question, I'd like to ask, what are all the other brands of vaccines, like the Pfizer and the Moderna? We were talking a lot about all those, and they were going to come into India. And when they come into India, the Covaxin and Covishield will push back and all that. Did it come into India? Number one, will it be pushed back if it comes into India? What do you think will happen?
In my personal opinion, the the whole virus vaccine, which are prepared on a platform of the whole virus inactivation, plus with an adjuvant to increase the immune status, can never be pushed back. It will be there in the market for a very, very, very long period. I don't think it will be, which is possible to push them out. Other vaccines might stage a comeback because, as I said, the RNA virus keeps changing its. Can I hear you, Ajay?
Yeah, you can hear me. I think my video is gone, but it will come back in some time.
Yeah.
I don't know why going on.
So the RNA virus always changes its phase, and you may need to keep changing its phase every year. And that boosters might come through every year. One may have to take the boosters to prevent themselves from getting COVID. But if it is going to be the Omicron that's going to be prevalent, so the guidelines are still not out yet because the boosters, the third booster is still not evidence-based yet. The second, yes, first and second, definitely we need to take them. The third booster, as I said, Omicron itself has given quite a significant amount of immunity to a lot of individuals. And we are suggesting these boosters for those people who are above 60 years and who have other comorbidities like the diabetes, chronic renal failure, transplants, and so on.
Okay. We have one more question. Okay, is it that the booster dose of Shield is compulsory for those who took 2 doses? I think you have answered that question. Depending upon specific certain conditions, you will be requiring booster doses. And one more question is, does wearing mask for long period of time lead to some long-term respiratory issues? As long as you change the mask regularly and wash the mask if it's a cloth mask, I don't think you're going to have a problem. That's I would take the liberty of answering that.
The N95 vaccines, I always N95 masks are not to be worn all through the day. It is quite difficult to wear that 3-layered, 4-layered. Some people wear 2-3 masks on their faces. I don't think it is necessary to. If you are going to a high infection zone, there only these N95 masks are useful. Otherwise, routine masks are good enough, because N95 masks we wear for a long period, you definitely have some people who are asthmatic will have difficulty in breathing and so on. But nevertheless, a good surgical mask is a good thing to prevent yourself from any infection.
Okay. Should we vaccinate children? I think that's the raving question now, because after a long time, schools were reopened rather. 2-year gap, schools were reopened in January, February, and at that time you were having 3-day a week school. Uh, so there was a lot of uproar that some parents were willing to send the children to school, and some parents were not willing. So it was left to the discretion of the parents. So now in 2022, May, June, when the school is going to reopen for the kids, do you think it is safe for them, or should we have a strategy where we have to start vaccinating children also?
No, I think the guidelines are out that children between 5 to 11 can be vaccinated. But
What about our country in India?
in my personal opinion, if you take the data of the serious COVID problems, it is only 0 to 1 lakh. That is the international data. They did not have any serious problem in children at all with COVID. Number one, they might be having an infection. As I said, they might have a COVID antibodies positivity. When you have a COVID antibody in your system, it's my personal opinion, I don't think that is a big need for COVID vaccination among the children. I think that's a very big debate that's going on across the world, whether children in this age group to be vaccinated at all. Because if you look into the benefit risk ratio, the chance, if you have even 1 in 1 lakh chance of getting an infection, a serious problem with a component vaccine and the COVID, I would not subject my child for that vaccination. So that's the reason why there is still a lot of debate going on, though the guidelines are out that we can vaccinate children between 5 to 11. They are very safe because the vaccines are relatively new, so only 2 or 3 years now, and it takes more time for the vaccine study to go on in children. So we need to wait and see. So my personal opinion is I would just wait, because they are not mandatory. We can just wait and see. And as I say, if you see the Omicron, it's a gross underestimation that is going on. If you check the Omicron if you check the antibodies in kids, we not got the study yet. I think majority of them will have antibodies. And if you have antibodies, that is enough. Because now what we have now is only a Omicron subvariant only that is going around globally, it is going around that. When we did not have any serious problems in Alpha and Delta itself in children, I don't think one need to worry greatly about this Omicron.
So as of now, the vaccination strategy for children is not yet clear in our country.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
So what about schools being reopened? I think that is the way forward. As a father, I think we should. Because other problems of childhood are more severe to handle than COVID. That's what I feel. So do you think so too, or do you think schools should be closed for some more time?
Schools should open. I don't think they should close the schools. I think most of the parents have got used to staying at home, keeping their children at home, not going out at all, happily darling. I think the parents have to be told that it is time that the children are willing to go, but the parents have to be told. Especially the working parents are extremely happy staying at home and training them at home and bring them on the Zoom. I think they must realize that it is a big stress on the child if the child does not know how to share and how to play in the group, how to get exposed to other teachers, toughness, handling, all those things. Because the child psychology is something entirely different, which most of us are. I think COVID has taught us a very big lesson, and parents also should realize and cooperate. Because as I see, if they take a voice word, I spoke to one of the school and colleges. Majority of the parents say we don't want our children to come to school. Why? I don't know why. What is the reason? That's probably because of the fear that is created by the media, paper, and other things. And now we have got used to seeing nothing else. You ask anybody about the Ukraine war, they won't even see the Ukraine war. They will first go and see the number. How many COVID? Today is 54. Yesterday 51. Today 56. That's what people are looking at. I think people should start, as I said, people should stop looking at these numbers and see from the holistic standpoint of the masking, vaccination, the good thing, the positive things that are there, with which one can prevent 100% protection with the COVID disease and then move forward. I don't think it is a right thing to keep the schools closed, college closed eternally.
I would agree with you that a lot of parents are still hesitant to send their children to school. But if you see on the other hand, if you go to the theaters and malls and places where children play, there are so many children and the same parents. I think a lot of people who have said no to school, they are also coming there. You're seeing two ends of the spectrum on the same thing. So there's a lot of paradoxical thing being held on. At one point, you feel like people have lost the fear, and as I said, they don't even wear masks. Even the masking is very relaxed, and only a tenth or 15% of people wear masks. But at this end of the spectrum, you see a lot of people still hesitant to send their children to schools. But I think hope that should change. We have one more question here. Does you have said the impact of Omicron variant was not very severe. Would future mutations become ensure weaker variants of the virus, or is it there a possibility of the virus becoming stronger?
Nobody can predict this actually. It is extremely
If at all,
impossible to predict whether the future mutant is good. We never predicted a COVID in Wuhan, the Wuhan virus would cause such a devastating effect across the world. We can never say that. Nobody can predict it. All these mathematical models which they predict and which they keep telling are all based on numbers. And these numbers can vary because it is the virus, it's a biological thing that has to mutate. And if that has to mutate, just like that. If I had to give an example, you are looking at the alpha wave in COVID-19 in 2019 when you had that first Wuhan virus, sometime in March when we started having it. It went on for 8 months. It went on for 8 months. We did not know what to do with it. We started from chloroquine to everything that was available on the earth to try on this thing. And suddenly the Delta came and devastated us. The Delta virus came and devastated the whole universe. It caused diabetes, it caused mucormycosis, it caused aspergillus, it caused malignancies, it increased tuberculosis, it caused so much of devastation. I don't think anybody predicted that Delta would cause this kind of a problem, because the ramification that a viral mutation can cause is something nobody can predict. Same is the thing. They have identified 30 subvariants in Omicron. None of them has caused, and among them is Omicron XC is the one they say is highly infectious. Yes, it's highly infectious. We all know about it, that is highly infectious, but it has still not caused any serious disease across anywhere in the world. What we see the surge in China, the fear that we find in paper is only because they want to follow their zero COVID strategy. So that's why they are doing that. I don't think, in our country, I will say, is very mature. Our states are very, very mature. They have still not followed that kind of a strategy, which countries like China, New Zealand, Australia, which thought that they must follow that zero COVID strategy. It's not possible. It is one flight away for a COVID to enter in their country. How long can you keep the people away from their near and dear by keeping a watch and vigil on this COVID virus? If this goes, some other virus will come. So mutations are something which you can never predict. It just comes, it goes, and if it comes, we must be prepared for it. I think COVID has taught us a very good lesson in that sense. We are prepared for it.
we have one question from the audience. In autism, in children with autism, whether vaccination is good and necessary. What is your take on that?
No, autism is a different problem. COVID prevention is a different problem.
Are they more likely to be, because most of the children with some mental health or congenital conditions, they tend to be more prone for infections. Do you think they require a special care in terms of COVID, or should they be treated like every other child?
They should treat like any other child only.
Child.
The COVID vaccination is universal, whether you have undergone a transplant, whether you have a disease, whether you suffered from COVID, Whether you don't suffer, you have not suffered from COVID, whatever it is, the policy is uniform. You take the vaccine, you take the booster. And after the two vaccines, the third vaccination, as of now, depending on the availability, we are now telling people above 60 years can take the vaccination. People above 60 years, they suffered from the COVID means there can be a 9-month gap, and after 9 months, they can take the vaccine. But this can keep changing depending on the dynamics, depending on the availability, depending on the strategy, it will keep changing. As of now, the policy is COVID prevention policy is universal, irrespective of the autism problem or other medical problems.
So once the vaccination becomes available for children in our country, I think a child, a normal child, or a child with autism, or a child with any other problem should go for it.
Yes, yes.
So there is no difference between the strategy between this child 1, child 2, child 3.
I don't think there is any difference. As I said, the prevention policy is uniform for all kids.
Okay. We are nearing the end of our program. And what do you think about the non-COVID conditions that is going on? Like when COVID was there, we used to see a lot of non-COVID conditions take a back seat. In the end, these kind of diseases had a flare up and all that. So do you think COVID testing is still mandatory before a patient has to be admitted in the hospital for a non-COVID problem, or that strategy has changed? Because ICMR removed the strategy for non-essential COVID testing. So maybe in February, I think that COVID testing for a patient who was going to get admitted into the hospital, that thing was removed in February 2022. Do you think it should be back, or we should continue as it is right now?
Yeah, I think here it will be again a personal opinion. My personal opinion is for all routine illnesses, one need not do a COVID screening. But in some select situations, like say, for example, in cancer centers, in cancer hospitals, or hospitals that are dealing with immunosuppressed individuals to a large extent, or in psychiatry hospitals where they deal with this kind of thing, there it becomes mandatory. Suppose you are going to do a cancer surgery on a patient, I think it is better if you do a COVID screening and do this. It's not because the COVID will cause a problem. As I said, in alpha and delta waves, COVID itself was a problem. COVID was killing people because COVID was affecting the lungs. It caused a decrease in saturation. It went and affected the beta cells in the pancreas and caused diabetes-like situation and increased the mucormycosis because COVID itself was a problem. Whereas in Omicron variant, now Omicron is not a problem, but the comorbidity was potentiated by the Omicron virus. So if the patient has a malignant disease, the COVID virus, the Omicron virus, which is the XC virus, can spread very fast. It can affect other organs. It causes more problems. But we don't know much about it. So we are being one has to be extremely careful if you are dealing with places where there is immunosuppression, like specifically the
cancer places, post-transplant,
cancers, and so on. If, say, for example, diabetes mellitus patient, severe diabetes mellitus patient undergoes a bypass grafting, I think one has to be careful in checking. We are checking thyroids, we are checking HbA1c. I don't think there's anything wrong in checking. On the other hand, if you deny a surgery to a patient who has an acute appendicitis on the basis of COVID is not there, you might lose the patient in the process. So I think that judgment has to be made from case to case basis.
Treating person.
Yeah.
Okay. And one more thing is, do you think this routine pre-surgical COVID testing also you have answered, but what about surgery in COVID patients? Even if they're COVID positive, I think if it's an emergency surgery, we should go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we should go ahead and, as long as it is not a Delta, there are just to say whether it's a Delta variant or Omicron variant. And if it is an Omicron variant, I think you can safely do any surgery. There are COVID designated theaters in most of the hospitals where you can do those cases, taking special precautions.
Okay. Just one last question before we wrap up. What is the current treatment strategy? We have had extensive discussions before in our programs, like all those medications which are available, which are not available, oxygen, and so many monoclonal antibodies, tocilizumab and oseltamivir, and all that stuff are going around. So what is the current medication strategy that we follow for COVID or Omicron in specific?
So if you take Omicron specific, the new drug that came, molnupiravir, it was a specific drug for this Omicron. But Omicron itself is a self-limiting disease. So that's why nobody thought of these antiviral drugs at all. So we are not using any of these antiviral drugs nowadays for this Omicron virus. One is people don't come to the hospitals with Omicron symptoms. Number two is when you see a patient, we probably might have Omicron, or even if it is positive, we only tell them to stay at home for 2 to 3 days because it's only a 3-day problem. So 3 days you stay at home, you don't need to spend money on that Omicron. So we don't treat any of these antiviral drugs. And the remdesivirs and other paracetamol and all those things are all out now. We don't use them at all unless you pick up a delta in these people, or when you have a delta virus that's going around, or if you have a patient with COVID where you don't have facility for identifying a delta virus, if this patient develops a serious problem, such patients, yes, we do give them this tocilizumab and remdesivir and so on. That's all. They are in the hospital. The hospital takes a
So
decision on that.
nothing over the counter, no medications,
No
except
medication
paracetamol.
available for available, no, not necessary for Omicron because it does not cause any serious symptom
problem.
at all.
Okay, I think that is very encouraging to hear. So for the final question, I would like to ask, have we done a good way as far as India is concerned? Have we done a good job in handling COVID? Because there's a lot of divided opinion on this. I know there's a lot of politics also, but this is a kind of politics and science question. So have we done a good job in handling COVID?
Yeah, I would say it's very, very difficult to answer. As I said, I think in the middle of my talk itself, I had mentioned that the alpha wave that was really went through, we started late in our country. When Wuhan was reporting cases in December 2019, we did not have much of COVID. Our first COVID came sometime in March itself. That itself means that we had certain amount of natural limit. Our country had good amount of natural immunity, natural resources. Whether the hygiene theory is helping or not, I don't know. So we had our alpha, and when alpha entered our country, we went through a very big phase. As I said, for about 8 months, we had that suffering, strict lockdown measures, and so on. We went through for a fairly long period. And after that, the Delta wave, if you take, the Delta wave literally killed the whole country. We saw dead bodies in Ganges. We see a lot of gory pictures we saw in videos, and they were all running around. But luckily for us, Delta wave ended in, I think, 25 weeks or 26 weeks, if my estimate is right. We just ended that. Compared to the Alpha wave, Delta came down very fast. For us, or for the global thing, the blessing in guys was Omicron. So whether India did a good job or a bad job, I don't know. The Omicron came as a blessing in guys for us. It came, it went through, it prevented, it infected so many other people and so many vulnerable people that they also developed antibodies. And people who got vaccinated, who did not get vaccinated, also developed Omicron and developed antibodies. And they got prevented from that actually. And our vaccination policy was so good. So which means our population, we had a fair amount of natural infection. We had a vaccinated lot. We also had a Omicron vaccinated lot. So these all three together have combined together, have given India a very good opportunity. I think in that case, I would say we have not done badly with regards to COVID. We have done very well, especially with regards to our vaccination. Did a very good job. So that created so much of confidence among the people. The two vaccination gives, even among the clinics, when the person says I'm vaccinated, 2 vaccinations over, it gives a good sense of confidence for us. I would say I can give a full mark for our country for having done a good job in bringing this. Even now, when US and UK are reeling under the Omicron, this thing, we are not seeing that kind of, though we are not done much of the testing in our country. We have still not had a big amount of cases that are occurring. And as I said, till now, we have not had any great admissions in many hospitals across the city with regards to the serious COVID infection. So your question, your answer, the answer to your question is that we have done a very good job with regards to the COVID. As a parting note, I like you said is the last question. I like to say it's 2 minutes. That very important point people should remember is there are still some people who have not got vaccinated. I strongly urge them to go for this vaccination because still people are afraid of the second. I am not talking about the booster vaccination, which I keep telling it is not evidence based. That's why we have called it as a precautionary dose. The precautionary dose is for people who have some other coexisting illnesses and so on. But there are still certain amount of people who have not had even their first dose for fear of side effects. Some people have had the first dose, they have not gone for the second dose yet. Please do go for the vaccination because, as I said, there are only two main armors for this disease. One is the mask, second is the vaccination. They are the two most important things. With this note, I would end this, and you have any parting comments, you can.
Thank you. It has been a very lively discussion and good participation from the audience on both our portals. And with that, I'd like to say one thing. It is very heartening to note that from all what you have said, even though COVID is not over, we might still continue to lead a near normal life, if I can say, with COVID.
Yeah.
And maybe we are nearing the end of the pandemic and going into an endemic phase. And let us hope with time things get better and we return to normalcy. And with that, I'd like to conclude this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.